Welcome to Canadian Music in the 80s and 90s A, my YouTube channel and my Facebook group. It's a pleasure to have, first time I've had two guys on at the same time. Got Greg Stapleton and Dennis Elsworth. Collectively, they form a band called Fabulously Rich, the greatest Tragically Hip cover band I've ever heard. And it's great to have you guys here. Second of all, should we make mention of your other members that can't join us today?
No. Dennis is saying no. Dennis is saying no, but I'll say yes. We do have a couple of other members. Our lead guitarist is Trevor Campbell. Our rhythm guitar player is TJ Lewis, and one of our newest members, our bass player, is Craig Goodick.
Awesome. How long has Craig been with you now?
So Craig's been with us. He did a couple of shows in the fall. Mm-hmm. Is that right, Dennis? He did a couple of shows with us in the fall, and then we picked him up in the new year to take on that the bass role.
Oh, awesome! Very cool.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll start off. You guys are a Tragically cover band collectively when you're together. Is that all you guys do when you play, or do you do other stuff on the side, or do you do your own music at all? Or
Danny, you can feel that one.
Yeah, I do a lot of my own music. Oh my goodness, do you hear that? Am I in a cave?
You are in a cave. Let's figure that out.
Hold on.
Get a sound guy. You're going through your computer speaker microphone instead of your microphone.
No, okay. Hold on a second. I know what it is. I have a recording program open at the moment. And I think it's
some reverb on your mic.
Some reverb. Let me answer while I'm in this cave. I do a lot of my own stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've got many different projects on the go. In this group, though, all we do is Tragically Hip songs.
Mm-hmm.
Try to recreate shows, like how they would have done. But we have talked about doing other things. We just never did them. Like we did talk about learning a bunch of other 90s tunes because mm-hmm. That's what we used to do in a band that we formed in high school. So there was talk about it, but we've never really pulled through on it because we've been busy enough and engaged with this project enough that it just never really pushed this out of the way.
You guys have really caught quite a following, because I know every time you book a show, you sell out fairly quickly, pretty much wherever you go here in the Maritimes, at least. When did you guys all start? Like, obviously you've all got a love for the Tragically Hip. When did this kind of all form, when you guys all got together and decided to do this?
So I guess a bit of a backstory for us is that we played in a band. A few of us had played in a band when we were in high school together. It was an original and cover band mm-hmm. When we were teenagers, and that's how I met Dennis. Our original bass player Mike Montney and I were sort of playing a little bit together when we were in high school in grade 10. We really didn't have any other band members in our band. We needed a singer, bass player, another guitar player, and that sort of thing. And Dennis sort of approached me in high school and had asked me if I played drums, and I said yes. And Mike and I sort of came as a package deal, and then we sort of started our original and cover sort of band back in the 90s, and that included myself, Dennis, and Mike, who was our original bass player at the Fabulously Rich, and we also had in that original band was Trevor Campbell, who plays lead guitar with us as well. So we've all been friends since high school and started playing music in high school. And as that band sort of progressed, we got a little bit older. We used to cover a lot of the Tragically Hip's music when we'd play around in the bars around Charlottetown, and they were a big influence on us. As musicians. Go ahead, Danny. You go.
Just wanted to say that was only 32 years ago.
Only 32.
Is it really? Oh wow, that long? Holy.
Yeah, just 32 years.
Only 32 years.
You're making me feel old too, so
It's all good. I mean, that was the point of what I'm saying, but um,
but
carry on, Greg.
Yeah, so we used to do some. We sort of went our separate ways after high school, and everyone had their own lives and that sort of thing, and we stepped away from each other. Dennis continued to play music. I was playing some music here or there, in and around town, around Charlottetown,
mhm,
and the other guys as well were sort of away, and we just we decided we were going to have a reunion show probably about 10 years after we sort of had our original breakup, and we did that show, and it was great, and we had a lot of fun, and that was sort of it. We didn't really do anything after that. Everyone sort of went back to their lives, and it was just more of a nostalgic fun to play some of the old songs that we did and some old cover songs that we did back in the 90s. And
right,
so we did that. And then about 10 years later, we realized that everyone was sort of back in the same area again. Everyone was sort of back on PEI. And we decided to do another reunion show. So we put it together, and we did a one night show at Hunter's, and we had a lot of fun, and it was great to play music with the guys again. But we realized that there was only a select few that really wanted to hear our high school originals
right,
when we were teenagers. Those diehard fans that used to follow you around in high school to all your shows.
right,
But then but the one thing that did come of that was that we really realized that as friends, and having that friendship for so many years and playing together for so many years, and sort of forming that bond, we realized that we really enjoyed being around each other as adults again,
right,
and not just teenagers like we were. And we decided that we wanted to try and do something else, sort of move forward, and keep playing music with each other. And then we got news, or we heard or found out that Gord Downey had terminal brain cancer and was sick. And we really didn't have a sort of project as to what we were going to do, getting the band back together. And it was sort of a collective sort of idea. And Dennis had mentioned, well, why don't we do learn a bunch of Tragically Hip songs, and let's do like a one night all Tragically Hip show, and we'll raise some money
yeah,
for brain cancer. And that was back in 2016. So we did that. We learned a bunch of Tragically Hip songs. The one sort of hiccup on our way was that the original rhythm guitar player, who was in our original band in high school, and our high school friend, we had a couple of rehearsals that didn't go quite as planned. And we quickly realized that we weren't going to get through 35 Tragically Hip songs, learning 35 Tragically Hip songs in the amount of time that we had with our old friend. And so we decided that we would sort of look elsewhere, and that's how we found our now and TJ Lewis, our rhythm guitar player. I was actually sort of playing some music and just sort of jamming around with TJ, and I went to the guys. These are guys that I've known since high school, and we've been friends, lifelong friends, for a really, really long time.
mhm,
So it was trying to find that piece. How do you bring somebody into that group? And there's a little bit. I think the boys were a little bit skeptical at first. I'm like, I know this guy. He's a really good guitar player. You know how that story usually
yeah,
goes. It's like, oh yeah, sure he is. He's a lot younger than us. He's only in his 30s, but I'd like to have him out and see what he's a big Hip fan, loves the Hip, and he can play that music. And why don't we get him out and see if he can do this? And sure enough, we had our first rehearsal with him, and he nailed it, and we all kind of hit it off, and the rest, so they say, is history.
so you guys do quite a background of Tragically Hip stuff. You don't just do like the big hits from the early days. You really do cover quite a spectrum of their songs. That I've noticed that when I've seen you guys play. You'll go right into some of the later albums as well too, which is really something. Are those harder to learn, or does everybody just want to hear the classics? Or
Uh, definitely people want to hear the classics. We can't get away from that, and that's okay because they're great classics, great
Right.
songs. I always on stage. I sometimes I joke that some of the songs we're playing tonight are for the audience, and some of the songs that we're playing tonight are for us.
Right.
Because there's a lot of lately. I've been calling the deep cuts the high flying birds. So they're the ones that just kind of go over everybody's head.
Yeah.
But we still want to do them, and they're not any harder to learn than any of the classic stuff.
Mhm.
And sometimes the audience will surprise us with a reception to what we would consider a deep cut, and then it ends up staying in the set list for a really long time. Vapor Trails is one of those kinds of songs that we haven't actually played it in a while, but we did play it for a couple of years, pretty much in every show, and it went very well. And then we've tried some other ones that just kind of hit the wall with a thud. But the thing about the Tragically Hip, as far as we can tell, is that a lot of the music was recorded. It seems to us that it was recorded with about a 10% element of haphazardness. And they do
Right.
things on those records that you don't even understand. The musically don't make a lot of sense. And it's probably because they're working off of jam tapes.
Right.
So there's some form to it, but at times one of the guitar players is playing something that you just wouldn't normally choose to play. But that's what makes those recordings pretty special and unique. And Trevor and TJ definitely dig pretty deep to try to emulate that in a really honest way. So that's a something that helps our presentation of this music, because there's a lot of intricacies that we could just miss if we weren't really paying attention.
Right.
So it's been fun learning all these songs. I don't know how many we know right now, Greg. What would you say? We're probably getting up to around, like, over the years that we've played, maybe somewhere around 65 or 70 different songs.
Yeah,
Like,
if not more. If not more.
yeah, maybe more. We could play if we rehearsed everything that we've done in the past. We could probably play 3 nights back to back and not repeat a song.
Right.
But as you know, and your original question is based on these classics, we can't. There's about 20 songs in the set list every night that we can't skirt, so we
Right.
have to. And that's great. I mean,
What are some of your favorites, like from you guys, like from you? What are your favorites to play, or favorite songs of the Hips anyway? Like,
oh dear. Well, we just recently started playing Yawning or Snarling, which sounds
oh wow.
really, and I really love that song. One of my favorite songs is one that we aren't playing yet, and that's World Container. I really love that song. I love singing In View. I think that's a lot of fun to play, and it's nice to see a crowd go wild. And that sort of bridges the gap between old fans and young fans, because
Right.
that song right there, sort of, you see young people at our shows losing their mind to that song the same way the old folks do. And they also go pretty crazy for the classics, but when you have such a wide variety of people coming to see you play, kids who grew up listening to the Tragically Hip through their parents, and then parents,
Yeah.
it's fun to connect with both. So I really love singing In View for that reason. It seems like there's a sweet spot to that song. I don't know.
You-
What do you think? So many good ones to play. Like On the Verge,
Yeah.
we just started playing On the Verge as well, and it's a real ripper. Like, I'll sing that song every night if I have to.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many, like, so many people have asked me that question, what is your favorite Tragically Hip song? And I'll be completely honest, there isn't really just one song
right.
that I can say is my favorite, but I can say that there is one song that I feel like a lot of Tragically Hip fans. I find that the biggest thing with the Tragically Hip fan is that they find a song or songs or an album that they connect to it. They connect to
Right.
that song in some way, whatever it may be. whether it's the lyrics, whether it's just the song itself, or what it makes them feel, or, you know, it
Right.
reminds them of a time of where they were when they heard that song. So I'm going to give one example of that, of a song, of a Tragically Hip song, and I'm going to give a little bit of a story to it as well as to why it's, I would say, is probably, if I was going to say this is a song that I connect to the most, it would be this song. And the song is 50 Mission Cap. And that's one reason is because I'm a huge Toronto Maple Leafs fan. But the other reason is I remember going to the Tragically Hips show in Halifax at the Halifax Metro Center. The show was sold out. This is back in, oh my goodness, and when was that?
95.
95.
94,
When
95. It was the day
94, 95.
I was
That's
gonna
right.
say
The
Day for Night. Day for Night would have just
Yes.
come out.
Yep. And the odds had opened up for them, but
Oh,
there
wow.
was, you know, it was just such, and it was just such a great show. And, you know, obviously, you know, great people to be around as well at a Tragically Hip show. So there's an energy to a Tragically Hip show, to a live show, which is something that we try to emulate every time that we play our shows. That's the part that we try the most, is to try to connect with their fans. It's not our music, so we're trying
Right.
to, and we're not trying to, you know, Dennis isn't trying to be Gord, you know, we're not trying to be the hip. There's only one Tragically Hip. But what we try to do is we try to bring what you would feel if you went to a Tragically Hip show, to a live
Yeah.
show. That's, we try to bring that feeling and connect that music to their fans. So for me, 50 Mission Cap is that song for me, because like I said, being a Leaf fan, but also that one night that we were in, you know, in Halifax watching this show, and they go into this song. And I remember when it, just before it got to the chorus, where he says, and, you know, kept tucked up under, and then they lit up every light in the Halifax Metro Center. Do you remember this, Dennis? And I was with Dennis, and I was with Dennis's brother Gavin, and I can't remember who else was there, but I do remember those two were there. And I just remember that moment. Well, who was, sorry?
Maybe Robbie. Was
Oh, maybe,
Robbie?
yep, possibly our friend Robbie Power. But I still remember that moment. I just remember watching them and just how they were digging into that song, and just,
Right.
you know, what it meant, and just how it was going along. And the next thing I knew, you know, it gets to the chorus, and they light up, the Halifax Metro Center lights up every light in the place. So you can see everybody around you. You
Right.
can see people beside you, people across, everyone on the floor. And I just remember looking around and just saying and hearing this, and people yelling and screaming and just cheering. And I just remember that moment, and looking at Dennis's brother and just being like, what just happened? What is this? This is incredible. It was like getting hit by lightning. And that, so that's something for me. So every time we play that song, it brings me to that moment, to that memory, which I think is, for a lot of, you know, not just the Tragically Hip, for music in general. You know, when you listen to music or listen to a
Mhm.
song, you remember certain things, you connect with it. But there's just something special with the, you know, as a Tragically Hip fan and listening to Tragically Hip's music, listening to their songs, people connect to those songs and they feel a connection to them. And I know that, you know, when you had mentioned about playing the hits, you know, a lot of people are connected to those hits because maybe that's what they listened to in their car, in their
Yeah.
tape deck when they were in high school, and they listened to it over and over and over again, you know, that one song. Or there's people that come up to us at shows and they say, you know, when you guys played Courage, like that's the song that that we listened to all the time when my dad was going through cancer.
Yeah.
Or, you know, things like that. Or sometimes when we play the song Scared, like there's people cry, like there's people that
Yeah.
are, or long time running, people are crying to those, you know, to those
Yep.
songs because they are connected to those songs, and they're connected to the Tragically Hip that way. And, you know, that's what we try to do every single night, every single show that we play, we try to make that connection with them again. So
You know what,
Was
Greg? A lot of times we hear from people through our social media accounts, or just speaking to them after a show. Um, they're very grateful, and you know, there's a lot of Tragically Hip tribute bands out there doing this. There's no question. Um, but people come up to us all the time and tell us how grateful they are that we're carrying the torch, we're keeping the music going for them, because
yeah.
they've seen other tribute bands and they don't blah, the whole story, you know, and we're just like, okay, that's great, that, you know, we're really we're really happy that you're happy. And to be honest with you, like that's the thrill that I'm getting out of this, is that I can see the joy in people's faces when we're performing these songs, and I know how much it means to them. And I know that they're never going to get to see it again in the real thing again. So we just try to be authentic with it. And I think that that helps with the connection.
It's funny you mentioned 50 Mission Camp. Like, I don't think you know the feeling of seeing that song played by the Hip in Toronto at the Air Canada Centre when they point up at Bill Barocco's
Oh,
banner up in the ceiling. Everybody looks up at it when they sing his name. Like, that's an
of course.
incredible feeling as too. That song just captures everybody in that building for sure. But would you guys ever do anything from the EP, the first EP with Last American Exit and Highway Girl on it?
Yeah, we've played Highway Girl and Small Town Bring Down.
Okay, because those are songs I find get ignored sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times they do. We ignore them now. We haven't played either of them in a while. But I mean, it gets like we talked about 10 minutes ago. It's hard to squeeze them all into one show. And the more that we learn, the harder it is to kind of find room in the set list for songs like that. There's great tunes on that record, no doubt about it. We
It's
have
just such a. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
we don't play very much anymore.
It's just such a huge catalog of songs,
Right.
and you know, there are so many great songs that to play. And when you're looking at, like Dennis had mentioned, about those 20 sort of songs that people expect you to play as a
Right.
tribute band, that they want to hear every single time that we play, it's hard to sort of, you know, siphon in the other ones,
Mhm.
you know, other songs that we feel people want to hear. And we also want to do ones that, like, we're constantly learning and trying to learn new songs. But what happens there is we put a lot of songs that we really like or sometimes people want to hear on the back burner. And it's unfortunate, but I mean, it's a great challenge, but it's a difficult challenge as well. We hate to think that somebody would be, you know, leaving one of our shows disappointed because they didn't get a chance to hear, you know, a song that they really wanted to hear. And we, you know, we really hope that they enjoyed the other 30 songs that we that
Yeah.
we played. But you know, if we missed that one song, but I get it. Like, this goes back to me talking about the connection to the songs
Right.
and connection to that music. Is this the reason they're very passionate? We know that, I mean, Tragically Hip fans are extremely passionate about you know, the Tragically Hip and about their music and about their songs, and what it means to them, and what their music has meant to them and what it continues to
Mhm.
mean to them. So you know, having people, like Dennis said, you know, thank us for what we're doing to sort of continue to keep their memory alive, keep their music alive, and keep Gord's memory alive,
Yeah.
by playing these music and these live shows, is because they aren't going to hear this music anymore, the live music anymore, and they're not going to get to go to a live show and feel that. So, you know, that goes back to me saying, you know, that's what we try to do every single night, is make that connection with those songs that they felt so connected to, or that show that they remember going to, like you just said, you know, seeing that in Toronto. And you know, you remember those moments, and
Right.
that's, you know, what we try to bring that to people as well, to bring them back maybe to that moment. um, I know one thing that we do hear a lot. I think pretty much every show, and Dennis will sort of agree with this one, is that, you know, people will come up to us after the show and they'll say, "Look, man, I'm the biggest Tragically Hip fan that, you know, there is. I've seen 30 Tragically Hip shows in my lifetime, and I was a little bit skeptical when I came to see you guys tonight, knowing you're, you know, a tribute band, but I'm telling you, I stood at the back of the room and I closed my eyes and I listened to you guys play, and I thought that it felt like I was at a Tragically Hip show." And that's the ultimate compliment. Like,
For
that's
sure.
the, you know, that's the reason, you know, it's sort of, it validates what we do and what we are doing. And, you know, to hear that is it's very rewarding, because it's, you know, it tells us that we are doing what we are wanting to do. And that's keep their music alive.
And do you notice that? I imagine you get a lot of the same people showing up at your shows, but you notice newer people showing up every time, maybe by word of mouth, and just you wanted to check you guys out, like.
Yeah, like we just played 2 sold out shows this past weekend, and both nights I asked the audience if anybody was seeing us for the first time. And night 1 there was quite a lot of newcomers. Night 2 were not so many, but still, you know, quite a few people still discovering that we exist. So
Yeah.
that bodes well for our future.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, and as for not hearing a song they want to hear, that means they're just gonna come out to see you more, right? So
I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes there's a song request that we just don't do. We haven't learned yet, but we always listen. Like we make notes about what songs are getting called out, and we're always. There was a period there not long ago where we slowed down learning songs, but we've accelerated. We've brought that back into the mix, and it feels really good. It's refreshing for us too, actually, to learn some new songs and play some new songs from night to night, because I don't know, like imagine doing it for 30 years like the Hip did with the same core songs, knowing they needed to play them. And it's just nice to have some fresh air.
for sure. I know I bug Greg a lot when I see him around about playing Silver Road, the song they did with Sarah Harmer. I've always wanted to hear you guys play that, but I don't know, maybe one day.
We could probably pull it off. It's a fantastic song.
Right.
You need a guest singer.
I was thinking Catherine McClellan, maybe, if she's hanging around or something like that, maybe. But
She'd do it well.
well,
sure.
Sarah Harmer was here last fall and we got to see her and she played it live. So she was actually here and she is the one that sang it with them. So
I always consider it a Sarah Harmer song, to be honest. We haven't touched any of this Gord Downey solo catalog either, but we could probably put a whole show together on that stuff too. But I think we're in good shape doing what we're doing right now.
I wanted to touch base on some of the posthumous release that the HIF have been doing, because I've interviewed Bill Welichka, the former Much Music VJ, who lives in Kingston and is very good friends with the HIP, the guys from the HIP, and he was saying that they recorded just about everything they did, which I guess proves, because that last live recording they just put out at the Roxy, which is just an amazing live recording. Yeah. It's the HIP at their absolute prime, I think. Like, are you guys fans of what they're putting out since Gord's passed away?
Oh yeah, I think the last record they made is one of the coolest records in their catalog. I mean, he was still alive, I think, when it came out, but it the stuff they put out, the Saskadelphia EP, we've played Montreal from that. We're learning Not Necessary. That stuff is really great. I do like it. I think keep it coming. The more the merrier. I know the HIP fans will want to hear more, and I know there's more in the vault. And it's not just live music, it's studio stuff.
Right. Because I think Gord and Bob Rock did something before he passed away, and that's starting to see the light of day now. And I've heard, from what I've heard, it's quite good as well.
Yeah, the songs I've heard are great. I do know that the HIP were recording stuff. I think they might have completed 6 or 7 songs before between Man Machine Palm and his death. There may be more, but I know for sure that there's that many. There's another batch of songs that Gord did with the Sadies as well, which will probably come out. There's a few things that I've been told by people I know who are close to the HIP about what's in the vault. And then they've even said publicly that there's probably enough B-side stuff collected over the years for a double disc worth of studio B-sides. So, there's more, there will be more. They're spacing it out quite a lot, but they obviously know that they have a set amount. They're not, it's not like Prince where he's got like 60 years worth of music recorded.
Yeah. Have you guys ever had a chance to meet the HIP at all?
Yeah, Dennis has a really good story about that same show that I mentioned about the 50 Mission Caps moment that I had. Dennis went missing that night. I think right after, or very close after that song, to be honest. And I think that's why when I looked, I saw his brother instead of him. But I'll let Dennis tell that story.
Yeah, so that after that show, so let me back it up for a second, because so this was a big deal in the mid 90s for kids from PEI. The Tragically Hip coming to the East Coast. They hadn't played PEI since they played in Summerside at the Regent. We were all way too young to go to those shows. So
Right.
finally they're in the East Coast again, and we all, I don't know if I think I probably got tickets with my dad's credit card over the phone, and we bought tickets to the Halifax show, but they played in Moncton the night before, and our friend Paige is cousins, or somehow related to Paul. So she had, I think Paige's mom is Paul's sister or something like that.
Yeah, I think Paul Langlois is her uncle.
Her uncle. Okay, yeah. So Paige had backstage passes. They were going to see the Moncton show. And did they drive over with us?
No.
Okay. My memory is pretty bad. I spend a lot of my mental energy remembering Tragically Hip lyrics. Anyway, she had these backstage passes, and the one that she had a big number 1 on it in a Sharpie. And I asked her for it. And she's like, well, what are you going to do with it? I'm going to put a 2 on it, and I'm going to get backstage in the Halifax show. I turned the one on the backstage pass into a 2, and they probably were like, oh, really, really nice try. But they let me in anyway. I got in. And so I was in the dressing room with the Tragically Hip after their show at the Metro Center, sitting in the corner as a 16 or what we would have been 16-year-old kid, bumming Gord Downey's cigarettes off of him, sitting in the corner of a hockey room, locker room, smoking Gord's cigarettes and chatting with Gord. I spent a long time chatting with a lot of them that night, but I spent the most time with Gord because he was just sitting down by himself in the corner, and I just went over and sat there with him and had a smoke, and then that went on for probably 45 minutes. He was really gracious, and then I got everybody's tickets signed and went back to the hotel room. I don't know what time I got back, maybe 3:00 in the morning or something like that. But everybody was still up, and I had all their tickets signed. That was the first time that I met the Hip. But over the years, we've seen the Hip quite a few times. I've seen the Hip a lot. I used to live in Toronto. Gord was a figure around the area that I lived in, the East Toronto. So I'd see him around. But in 2012, I made a record at the Tragically Hip studio in Bath. And it was Josh Finlayson who produced it. Josh from Skydiggers and Gord's band, The Country of Miracles. So when Gord was, I sent Josh a whole folder of songs that I'd written. And there was one in there that I said, take a listen to the song. It's a really rough idea of something that I think is kind of crazy, but tell me what you think about it. And it was a song that I'd written as a writer's block exercise, because I had a bad writer's block going up into that record, and it cracked that writer's block for me. But it was based around Gord's poem "Coke Machine Glow." So essentially, I 4-line poem that's on the back of that book. When I picked up his book to read it, that at that point to try to inspire me. I heard a melody, so I started strumming a guitar, and I sent this sketch to Josh, and I said, I want to kind of fill in the blanks for this story and see if I can get it, it's a crazy idea, but I feel compelled to. Coke Machine Glow is one of my favorite Canadian records of all time. So I wanted to, A, pay tribute to that album, B, get rid of my writer's block or what. So I told Josh this, and he said, well, I can't say for sure. Why don't we just see what Gord thinks about this? So he sent Gord a message and sent him the lyrics and a rough voice memo of the song. And Gord was pretty excited by the whole thing, and to the point where we back and forthed on it a few times, and then I ended up getting to record that song at the studio that they owned. So that whole experience kind of connected me to Gord Downie, and he followed my career all the years that he was still alive, the 4 or 5 years. And when I was in England, I don't remember when it was, 2016 or 17. No, 2015. It would have been 2015. They were playing in London, and I was playing in London the same night. So I sent Gordon an email, and I told him that I was in town, and he said, well, come down to the venue after your show and hang out for a bit. So I did. I hung out with them where I could, where I was around them,
Right.
and it was always nice. Gord was such a modest, humble guy, always just really cared about who you were. Didn't really want to, he didn't want to talk about himself. He wanted to find out more about you. I talked to him right before he died, actually, and so over the course of from 2012 until his death, I got a friendship going with Gord Downie. And when the band made the announcement that he had glioblastoma, I sent that message out that Greg was talking about, saying, why don't we do this tribute and raise some money and throw it towards a charity that means something to Gord.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. The whole band started from that one show. We were only supposed to do the one show, and it's 6 years later, and here we are. But I mean, I did get to hang out with all the guys in the band, but Gord was my friend in that group. The other guys were like, oh, hey, nice to see you again. But Gord was giving me hugs.
That's a great connection to have to a band that means so much to you. It must be like.
But and part of it for me too, part of the reason that this means so much to me is because I feel like, I don't, it's a tough line to walk, because on one side, he was my friend, somebody I deeply respected musically, and somebody who inspired me my whole career. And on the other side of it is me, the guy that loves to perform and just wants to do this because that's who I am.
Right.
So I'm trying to balance that a little bit so that it's not like I don't really tell everybody that that's the situation with me.
Mhm.
I don't feel like it's a bragging thing. I don't want it to feel that way. That's just the facts. And sometimes when I think about us doing this, to me, it's in honor of him, because of that connection that I had to him. It means so much to me that I'm so grateful that I get to do this, that I get to sing his words.
Right.
And sometimes I just kind of feel like he's pushing me on. He's cheering me on a little bit.
Well, I find it so sad with the way we lost Gord and the Hip, for that matter, because I think I lumped 3 Canadian bands into the same situation. I lumped Rush and Spirit of the West into that group as well, because we lost all 3 of them performing live in the same year.
Wow, crazy.
And all those guys are gone now. The guys that got sick in those bands are all passed away now. And I just find it really sad. And I lump Spirit of the West in there too, because I know the Hip we're big fans of theirs as well. But like 3 great Canadian bands, just you can't see them live anymore.
No, I know.
And it's just, I find it kind of sad. Because they were 3 of my favorite Canadian bands of all time. They were 3 bands I'd go see more than once and have seen more than once.
Oh yeah. Any chance you get, that's how I looked at it in the past, if it was in front of me, I was going for it.
Now you guys do a lot of shows in the Maritimes. Obviously, you have some coming up I believe next week in Nova Scotia.
This week.
This week. Oh, this week. Yeah.
This coming
but,
weekend. Yeah.
Do you hope to take it farther? Like, have you taken it farther, or do you want to take it farther, like more across the country, like into Ontario or Western Canada or something like that, if it's possible?
Yeah, we do. We do, and we're talking about it now. We're looking to do some Ontario stuff in the spring of next year. It's a lot, you know, like for 5 dads, some
Yeah.
of which day jobs. It's a lot to take time and get that far with it.
Sure.
But we do, like, you know, the dream is there for sure. If it ever presents itself. The thing about what we're doing is it's fairly self-sustaining. We do everything ourselves. We don't have, well, we have a couple people that help us with a few specific things, but overall we do everything ourselves. We travel with every piece of gear that we need. So we, you know, if we could just fly with everything that we have, we can go anywhere in the country and do this. And we'd like to, but once you, from my experience anyway, once you get into going a distance, if you're not gonna spend at least 2 weeks doing it, it's not worth all the travel time and expense of that travel.
Sure.
So we have to be able to do at least, you know, 10, 12 days on the road. And we can probably do that once or twice tops a year. So we have never done it yet, but we're talking about it because we know we keep getting messages from people saying, why aren't you coming to Ontario?
Right.
You can send them a message and say, well, why aren't you coming to PEI? Halifax, like us.
But
I mean, we
it's
always
worth
have-
the trip to PEI.
It is.
Newfoundland,
Definitely. I mean,
Newfoundland
ahead.
is on the list as well. We want to go further east because I hung out with Gord in St. John's after the Fully Completely tour. So there's a special place. Newfoundland is a special place, especially for the hip. They had a real connection to Newfoundland, and we have to get there. So that's on our list as well. But hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, we'll be in Ontario next, probably May.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
It's a ways away, but in order to do it right, I feel like we need to actually give ourselves the planning time and make it count.
Now, before I go, I want to get off the hip a little bit and just find out who some of your other favorite Canadian bands were.
Raffi.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Raffi.
What did you say? Say Raffi.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, he was a musician and he's a very good one.
absolutely. I still listen to him these days with my kids. Other Canadian bands? Well, like Greg said, the Odds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Odds,
for sure.
Odds are one of the best. The Pursuit of Happiness,
Mhm.
for me, one of the greatest Canadian bands.
Me too.
Change of Heart,
Change of Heart.
another great band. You know,
I saw
there's-
By Divine Right open for the hip.
yeah, by
Mm.
Divine.
That was an amazing show. 2 amazing bands on one bill.
Mm.
You can't go wrong
Spirit of the
with that.
West as well. Blue Rodeo, obviously. There's so many.
Northern Pikes.
Northern
Pikes.
Another great band.
Actually, one of those
And-
guys is coming to Charlottetown soon, from what I heard.
Yeah, Kevin.
Brian Potvin and Kevin Kane.
Oh yeah, Kevin from the Grapes of Wrath and Brian Potvin from the Northern Pikes. Yeah,
They're doing like a duo
Grapes
thing.
of Wrath, Grapes of Wrath, and the Grapes of Wrath is another great band. Over the last little bit, I've actually gotten to know Tom Hooper, his
Yeah.
dating friend of mine out in BC. He's a great dude. But that band were
And we-
great.
Oh.
Grapes of Wrath were a great band.
Oh, fantastic band. Absolutely.
agree.
Northern
we
Pikes
can't,
too.
We can't forget Haywire.
No, you can't
forget Haywire.
No. Hey, they were a
That's,
great
we-
band.
We grew up on the Haywire for sure.
I mean,
You know,
the amount of hits those guys had is very impressive. Very, very impressive.
Oh, they were right up there with everybody. They were right up there with Honeymoon Suite and Platinum Blonde and the Spoons back in the day. I think they were right up there. I think they probably played with all those bands too at some point back
Oh,
then.
yeah, they
And,
did for sure.
But yeah, they were
Spy
an awesome
Diggers,
band.
Skydiggers is another great Canadian band that
Skydiggers, the Sadies you brought up too, another great band.
I don't quite understand how the Skydiggers to me kind of they fly a little too far under the radar for what their value is to our
Yeah,
like the music that they write is so rich, and it just, I don't know. They're like, sometimes I have this thought, and it's a weird one, but if you listen to it, if you listen to REM and then back to back with the Tragically Hip, sometimes you can hear a similarity in Gord's voice with Michael Stipe's voice. I can anyway. And
I can see that. I hear that.
Tragically Hip are like the Canadian REM, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Like, I'm just in a comparison way. But if you look at the Skydiggers,
Right.
they have a very similar aesthetic to the Jayhawks, and the Jayhawks.
Right.
So the Skydiggers are kind of like the Canadian. I don't want to say it that way, but because they're an incredible band. But I find it interesting that I've been able to draw comparisons between those two bands, and obviously REM is
Right.
Jayhawks arguably are still, they fly under the radar for some reason, even though their music is fantastic. They have their success, but they don't have massive REM type success.
I was actually quite surprised to hear some of the following the Hip had with artists outside of Canada. Like, I didn't realize Pearl Jam was very aware of what the Hip were doing. Like bands like that.
There's a great American band called Marat. I'm a big fan of these guys. They're pretty dormant at the moment. I don't know if they're ever going to do anything again, but
Yeah.
On Facebook, I'm friends with one of the guys in the band because years ago I connected to him because I wanted to send him a t-shirt from one of my bands. I just thought he'd enjoy it. Sent him a t-shirt and an album from one of my bands called Haunted Hearts. And over the years, I've chatted with him, noticed some things that he posts. And when Gord died, he posts something about Gord Downey. And so I reached out to him and talked to him. He's from Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Lives somewhere in rural Pennsylvania at the moment, but spent a lot of time in New York. And he said to me, Gord Downey and the Tragically Hip are such huge influences on these two brothers that formed this band Marat that it just took me by some, it kind of shocked, because you don't often hear of US people talking about the Tragically Hip the same way that we talk about the Tragically Hip.
Yeah.
And that's what the Tragically Hip meant to him. And it's like on par with how I feel about them. So you forget that they made an impact. They really did make an impact outside of our country. Clearly, I've seen them in the States. They were playing, theaters and concert halls up to around 1,200, 1,500, 2,000 people. And the further south you go, the smaller the crowds get. I saw some blues in Charlotte, North Carolina, Myrtle Beach, and it was probably like 800 people. But then you see them in Canada and it's 30,000.
Exactly.
It's interesting that you say bands like Pearl Jam paid tribute to Gord Downey, but they really you forget how much of an impact they had, or you just didn't know, or maybe you didn't.
Yeah.
Because you're so, it's a Canadian thing. You just kind of wonder or forget. The myth was always like, or the talk was always why they had never broken the States.
Well, I mean, they didn't get huge in the States, but they had a following.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they played the whole country. They would play all the way down to Houston, Texas, or wherever, and still be attracting a few thousand people.
But then I know people that really like the Hip because we could say they were our band. As Canadians, they're our band. You know what I mean? Like, maybe people don't get them outside of Canada the way we do, but maybe we like it that way.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
They played Woodstock, they played Woodstock. They're clearly our band, there's that is something that we say with pride. in Canada. And you know, I'm even prouder of them for their successes outside of Canada, because it's not easy. They had great music, and they deserve to be heard wherever they went. You know, they did tour in Europe, but
Mhm.
not a lot. I think you know, you find your market that works and you stick to it. The other ones, I did talk to them a little bit about this one time about the US, and they didn't seem too interested in just in discussing it. They gave me kind of curt answers, but a lot of times more like, you know, we have our thing. We do what we do in Canada is worth so much to us emotionally, and that's where we choose to spend our time now. But in the early days when they were like they made a lot of those early records down in New Orleans.
Yeah. I was so proud to see them on Saturday Night Live myself.
Mm.
That was a amazing moment in the 90s, seeing them on Saturday Night Live. That was just incredible.
It was quite a thing. I remember watching that show too.
Just, I can't believe they're on this show that I just associate with. Well, I mean, there is a lot of Canadian connections to Saturday Night Live anyway,
Of course.
Yeah.
with Dan Aykroyd and Mike Myers, and Lorne Michaels being a Canadian himself too.
Yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't too hard to get them on the show, but that was a proud moment if you're a big Hip fan to see them on a show like that.
For sure.
Agreed.
There's
So,
another band that I forgot to mention during the great Canadian bands, but Teenage Head.
yep. I might be getting an interview with them when I go back to Ontario next week, actually. And I'm really looking forward to it because did you see the documentary TVO did about them?
I'd like to, but is it viewable anywhere?
Online, I believe, at their website. It was incredible.
Okay.
It was really good to watch. I really enjoyed it. I find some of these bands, you get a new respect when you see a documentary about them.
Sure.
Like, I don't know if you're a Rush fan, but if you saw the Beyond the Lighted Stage documentary, even if you didn't like Rush, you must have had a new respect for them after seeing that documentary.
100%. That actually, there's a funny story about that. We were in England. I was in England with my band, and some of the guys wanted to go out and wander around London, and myself and the guitar player Dan Curry said, you know what, we don't want to go out. We're just going to stay in. We're going to stay in the hang out. So we sat on the couch and we flipped through the channels. We're like, what the fuck do you guys want to watch? What do you want to watch? And we landed on the Rush documentary. And Dan looked at me. He's like, I'm not a Rush fan, but I'll watch it if you want. And I said, I'm not really a Rush fan either, but let's give it a shot. So two non-Rush fans sit down in England to watch the Rush documentary, and we both looked at each other at the end. We're like, can't deny it, man. You can't deny how great they were. And I'm never gonna be one of those people who listens to Rush once a week or even once a month, but every now and again I'll put some Rush on, and it always satisfies me. But there's about that much of it that I really love. I think that if it was a different voice, I would probably like it a little bit more. Geddy Lee's voice, there's something about it. I know how great he is and what he does, but it just, to my ear, it doesn't make sense. So
I don't know.
but I really love the documentary.
No, I just they're one of those bands I've noticed you either really love them or you don't.
It's funny you say that, because I am somewhere in the middle. I have nothing, like, I don't dislike Rush,
Yeah.
but I also don't like Rush. And
I don't dislike Rush, but I also don't like Rush.
Well, watch the movie I Love You, Man. Maybe you'll get another respect for them if you ever saw that, because those guys were diehards in that movie. It was actually quite funny.
I do think that there's a lot of value to what they did, but I don't know. It's funny to hear what you just said back to me, or what I said and you said it back to me. I don't dislike them, but I also don't like them. That's dislike, but
it was funny.
I'm just sort of like floating in space with Rush. That they don't do a whole lot for me, but they have so much clout and skill. It's clear. It's just
And they've influenced a lot of bands we listen to,
Yeah.
probably more than like the Hip are probably very influenced by what they did. I think
Foo
I've heard
Fighters,
the Hip
probably.
do Limelight before.
oh, probably back in the
Mm.
80s.
Yeah, I remember seeing a clip of them doing Limelight once.
Mm.
Like, what do you think of Rush?
Who, me
You
or
know,
Greg?
I like Rush. I enjoy Rush. Like I'm not.
But you also
It's
dislike.
a no. I don't dislike them, but I don't like them. No. I do like Rush. They aren't a band that I would listen to all the time, but I do like their music. My father is also a Rush fan, and I have a cousin that is probably one of the craziest Rush fans I know. But I took my dad to their to a Rush concert for his 60th birthday over in Halifax, and it was a great show. We had a great time, and again, seeing them live and seeing their fans, like a lot of bands, like even like the Tragically Hip, their fans are die hard for them. They absolutely love everything about them. They love who they are and the music and anything that they do, and their show was incredible. It was a great show watching, and to think it's just three guys up there doing that. Like it
Yeah,
just blew my mind, like what they were doing, you know, um, Getty on the synth, and also have the bass hanging around his neck, and he's, and also hitting pedals with it, with his feet while he's playing the bass and singing. Like, come on.
yeah,
And like and like all of them, the collective of just how great of musicians they are. But I can understand um their their music is so strange, it's so weird, their timing is so, it's like there's no, it's like it's like controlled chaos when I listen to a lot of their songs, because a lot of the stuff, it doesn't make any sense where they're going with some of the some of the beats and some of the way the songs are created. But I think that's the magic about that band. How, maybe we don't understand how they did it, but the way the three of them could put a song together, just blow your mind. That's just the musicianship and just how close and tight they were with each other. And for three guys, three Canadian kids, it's getting together to do that is impressive, and I have a lot of respect for them for sure.
and a drummer that writes lyrics.
There you go. Let's see. That's another thing, because I
I thought
cannot
as a
write.
drummer you'd be all over Rush, Greg. Come on, as a
Oh yeah,
drummer.
no, I mean, oh, absolutely. I mean, you um you have to love, that sort of you know that band that is
Yeah,
just such a, like I said, the musicianship, not just from Neil, but all of them are just, so good in their own right. Um but yeah, I mean, it's a pretty impressive. The thing is with Rush and me as a drummer, I could never play any of that stuff. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to listen to that. I can't play that. It's too hard for me. But like I said, I have an appreciation and a respect for everything that they've done for sure.
so Dennis, I wanted to touch a little bit on what you've got coming up soon. You've got some of your own stuff coming out and you're doing some shows, are you?
Not doing too many shows, no. In the fall I will be, I think, more than I am now. I have a couple of things, but nothing crazy. I'm recording some stuff right now. I recorded an album out in Vancouver last year that'll come out sometime this year.
Mhm.
And I'm also working on some stuff with Jim Bryson up in Ottawa area. So that'll come out. I don't know if it'll come out this year or next, but I'm spending a lot more time in studios than I am on stages for my own stuff. That's sort of my comfort zone anyway, is being in a studio creating music, less replicating it on stage. I feel like this group, the Fabulously Rich, ticks that box for me in a lot of ways, in ways that the other stuff doesn't, even, because
Right.
it's just I don't know. I don't have to really worry too much about the show, and I just really I really get a rise out of playing in the Fabulously Rich, and it's satisfying or quenching my thirst for live performance. I have a couple other bands that will play a few shows this year, but for the most part, I think I'm just going to stick to the studio. I have 2 young kids, so I'm not doing a lot of touring.
Right.
Maybe by next year, though, when the albums that I'm talking about are out, I'll go back to Europe or go to Western Canada. That kind of
Have you
stuff.
guys got any plans for the summer? Any festivals or anything like that in the works?
You mean the Fab Rich? Like
Yeah.
us, the band?
Yeah.
We have a lot of stuff lined up this summer for sure. As far as festivals, then I mean,
Not really
we have
festivals. Festivals have kind of steered clear of us.
Right.
I don't know if there's many tribute act festivals, but if we may be doing a few. There's a couple on the line, but there's nothing confirmed. We do have quite a busy schedule as it is, though. Like
Right.
we're doing quite a run of shows through the East Coast, which is typical for us. But we're going to some new places. Like we're going to make it to the Miramichi, and we're playing in Bridgewater. So
Okay.
we're going a little outside of the normal markets that we play. We have a fairly good schedule. We're back at the Shore Club in Hubbard's this year. We're doing Canada Day at Lightship in Lunenburg.
Okay.
So we're going to be busy enough. We could probably stand to be a little bit busier if we wanted to, but we're going to be busy. We're going to be busy enough. There's no question. And the fall will be just as busy, I'd say, as the summer. It hasn't really been put together yet, but we usually play, but we take months of January and February off almost every year. Then we play most of our shows between March and December. And we try to do about 3, 4, sometimes up to 6 or 7 a month.
Well, anytime you guys, I don't know how much of a following I have at the moment, but anytime you want to push anything you're doing, you're welcome to put it on my Facebook group or come on and chat about it anytime you want. I appreciate you guys sitting down and doing this with me today. I've been dying to do it for a while. I've been talking to Greg about it for a while now. At hockey games.
We've been trying to lock something down for sure, but I figure this is probably a good time to do it with some things that are coming up, and I'm glad that we were able to do it. So thanks a lot for having us.
Yeah, sure. You guys can share this wherever you want. When I get it posted, I'll send you the links, and hopefully you guys do. And like I said, anytime you want to plug something, Dennis, yourself, anything solo, anything the Fab Rich do, you guys can do it anytime you want on my group or YouTube channel. Feel welcome to. I appreciate you sitting down and doing this, guys. Really do.
When will it be up? Do you know?
I'm gonna try and get it up this evening. As soon as I'm done, I'm gonna upload it and I'll send the links to Greg, and you guys can plug away all you want. That's what I'm here for. I love Canadian music. I love chatting with bands, and I don't know how far I'm gonna get with this, but it's been a lot of fun. I've talked to people I never dreamt I'd talk to.
Well, that's the thing, man. It starts somewhere. Just like how we started this off. We didn't expect to be going for, like Dennis said, this was a one-night tribute that we were going to do, and that was it. That was 7 years ago. That was in 2016, and here we are still doing it because
there's a demand for it
all the time. There is, and there is for sure. And when you can do it and do it well, and people are still coming out to see your shows and still want to hear that, and they connect with you, then that keeps us going. Until that stops, then we'll try and go as long as we can. So
these people Greg are talking about, they tell us that we're not allowed to stop.
That's a good sign. That's a good sign.
True. That is true.
If this is going up tonight, then why don't we just say, get a ticket to the Halifax show on Saturday night. It's not sold out yet, but it's getting there. It's going to be a pretty big party. If you want to feel the electric love of the Tragically Hip in a room with 600 or 700 people, that's where you can do it on Saturday night, March 25th.
At
Yeah,
the
well,
Marquee Club.
it's the hip always reminded me of summer. I always had
Mm.
a summer vibe listening to the hip and camping or doing whatever it is you did in the summer. So seeing you guys this weekend will be a nice prelude to the nicer weather, hopefully coming up very soon. So
I hope so too. But I agree. It's going to be a fun time, and
yeah,
we're going to play. We're going to play for a while. It'll be a long show, I think, longer
well,
than.
you guys seem like you have fun doing it too, and that's something you can't fake on stage. You guys seem to have a good time doing it, and that the audience knows that too.
Well, you kind of you have to.
Yeah.
You have to. It's sort of it happens organically, really. To be honest, it's just
Yeah.
we really enjoy being around each other, and when we get a chance to, you know, get on stage and play this kind of music together as well. I mean, it's just that's sort of the gravy on top of just being able to spend time with, you know, four of your great friends. And I mean, it does show on stage because we just enjoy each other. We like, you know, being around each other. We like playing these shows, and a lot like the Hip too, where they were more like a family than sort of a band, and that's how I feel with these guys.
Awesome. That's a great way to look at it. I can't wait to see you guys play again. But anyway, I can't thank you enough for doing this. I really appreciate it. We'll get this up and running, and anytime you want to, like I said, anytime you want to chat or put something up or promote something, let me know. I'm more than happy to get it out to whatever audience I have. So,
Lovely.
all right. Thanks a lot, guys. Chat soon.
Thanks, Alan. We'll see you
All right.
soon, man.
Bye.
See you, Danny.